My guest today is writer-director Virginia Root, and in 2024, she won the George R.R. Martin Screenwriting Competition with her sci-fi pilot Deserters, received a grant from the nonprofit New Mexico Writers, and became a Stowe Story Lab Fellow in the New Mexico New Voices program. Now, Virginia's original pilot scripts, The Sisters Morrigan and Deserters, were second round finalists at the Austin Film Festival in 2021 and 2023. Virginia is also a Telly Award-winning commercial director, and the spot that she wrote and directed for the New Mexico Summer Food Program was awarded a Silver Telly in 2025. Now, her short film, Dead Weight, premieres at Dances with Films this month in LA, and Dead Weight is our topic of discussion for today. And what a topic it is. So, ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome award-winning filmmaker Virginia Root and her new short film, Dead Weight, to the show. Welcome, Virginia.
Hello, thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, well, I have to say right off, what in the world inspired you to write your first short and about an end of the world scenario?
Well, I came up with a very seed of this idea years and years ago. And that seed was, what if the world ended while you were on the worst first date of your life and you were stuck with this person as your survival buddy? And it all kind of evolved from there.
I get, when I watched this film a few times, I kept thinking, you must have had a million scenarios to choose from for Dead Weight. Was it difficult to whittle it down to just a few ideas and settle on this one?
In terms of what to include in the story,
No, just, when we think about end of the world, there's so
sure.
many different scenarios that we could choose. Uh, and this one
Yeah.
you chose of basically, I guess, interrupting someone's hiking trip.
Yeah, so I had this idea of what if the world ended while you were out in the wilderness. I wouldn't say I'm a huge outdoorsman, but I dabble and I enjoy backpacking every once in a while. And that it just struck me as an interesting scenario of if something had wiped out civilization, but you happen to not be in civilization at that exact moment, what does that mean? Who are you to have been in those circumstances, and who else would be out and about in that same place? So, um, yeah, that was the jumping off point. And also, I'm very much a producer, and it's hard to turn off that part of my brain when I am writing. So, this struck me as a way to tell a post-apocalyptic story without, getting into heavy VFX or, you know, too like getting too nitty-gritty about the explanation of how exactly the world ended.
Yeah, and and that was the thing about this film. That really wasn't even the focal point. We get it pretty quickly that both characters know that the world has ended. And so you have two main characters. You have Grace and you have Aaron. How would you explain those two?
Sure. So, Grace is an experienced backpacker, solo backpacker. She does this maybe like once or twice a year. And she has pretty strong outdoors and like backcountry skills. She's pretty comfortable in that situation versus Aaron is more of a dabbler. He just thought he was going on a day hike. And he's bitten off he's gotten himself way far over his head. He doesn't have a lot of experience in the wilderness.
Yeah, Aaron came across to me as someone that would be fine carrying a backpack through Disney World, but not exactly the forest.
Yeah, like he can do a day hike, but like this surviving for a long time is not his bag. Neither of them are like full survivalists, I would say. Like they don't know how to go like full, let's
Yeah, but see, the thing
craft and
is
shelter.
yeah, but see, like with Grace, I
Hmm.
found her to be self-confident. but
Mm.
she understands what she is facing for the most part, and she's willing to go it alone. I also noticed that she has compassion and a bit of grace, as her name implies. Aaron is insecure, he's clingy, he's scared, he's greedy, he's cynical, and he isn't self sufficient, which actually becomes his downfall. He's more like a little child in this whole scenario, isn't he?
Yeah, I would give Aaron a little bit more grace than that. Yeah, I mean, I don't think many among us would thrive in the situation that these characters are thrust into. And my way of thinking about it is he's like very logical, right? He's like, we need a plan. This is bad. Like it's gonna devolve really quickly from here. Um, what are we doing? We need to come up with a plan. And like Grace is a lot more like, well, it's not looking good for us. And she has a very different approach where to survive at all costs is not her instinct. She's had some time to think about it, and she's like, well, I think if the world's over, then I have my days are numbered, and I would like to enjoy my last few bits of time here, versus immediately engaging in a struggle. And Aaron, from his logical point of view, just like that doesn't make sense to him. Survival just feels rational, and that's really where they clash.
Yeah, because it was funny because with Aaron, I mean, instantly, I thought it was kind of funny. Instantly, he was just like, you know, we got to team up and we got to
Hmm.
rebuild. And I'm like, dude, you're standing out in the forest. Um, what do you plan on rebuilding? You know, and you
Right.
haven't even been back to civilization yet to figure it all out. But you're right about Grace. She was more like, okay, if 90% of the population has been completely wiped out, let me just enjoy the time I have left here without anybody else to share it with. Because I don't think she could have cared less if Aaron ever showed up or not.
Yeah, I think she would have been perfectly happy if Aaron had never showed up. Um, you know, part of what I was thinking about as the writer, like several steps back, is like this idea of that we have. Well, first of all, we have a culture where we have a ton of apocalyptic stories, and I think that's how we were able to get away with explaining the apocalypse so little, because the apocalypse is top of mind. We were thinking about the end of the world all the time. We consume a lot of these stories and entertainment, but also it's in the ether. So we've internalized a lot about like what the end of the world would look like because we have all of these stories. And there is this kind of prescriptive narrative like, what do? You join together with a ragtag team, whatever cards you're dealt, you make it work and you survive. And like, there's like a righteous struggle and like the fight for survival. So Aaron is like immediately tuned into that. Like, we know how the story goes almost. So he's like, just follow the beats of the story.
Well, yeah,
Like, what's wrong with you?
well, yeah, and see what I was really happy with was you have two people basically representing the general population. Neither one of them is a conspiracy theorist prepper. So it's not like you had somebody that knows how to build a lean-to out of a dead tree in 5 minutes. So, uh, or doesn't have military meals stored up in their home for the next 25 years. So it was just two regular
Maybe the
people.
dead guy, but he didn't make it.
Yeah, 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 and so because like with Aaron, I found him I I sided with Grace through this whole film because I'm like, I'm gonna be her because that guy, he's not an idiot, but it's just like, dude, calm down, you know? And that was where some of the cynical and the negativity was coming through because his fear, I mean, his cortisol levels were at an all-time high.
Absolutely. Yeah, he is. He's stressed. And yeah, I think that's like a source of annoyance for him from Grace of like, why aren't you freaking out? How are you staying so calm? That's weird. And
Well,
Grace
yeah.
just, yeah, she just is like, she has her own way of thinking about things. And she's also had some time alone to like really, she's had a day or two to absorb this news. And she just has a different philosophical take on how she wants to spend her time.
Yeah, and I like that because she was the one in this film that allowed the audience to slow down, but we immediately feel the disruption when he shows up.
Yes,
And
absolutely.
yeah, I mean, can you imagine if 90% of the world's population is gone and then coming across someone that you don't like? I mean, especially off first impressions,
Mm,
she already knew, and that you don't like them, and then they want to cling to you, and then you want them to leave you alone. I mean, literally, I sided with Grace with this one the whole way because there's two thoughts here. One wants to continue to survive and hopefully maybe rebuild the world, and the other one's just like, dude, I'm checking out. I'm getting off this planet.
yes, that was definitely something I was thinking about as I was writing, is that like Grace's frustrations, like the world has literally ended, and yet I am still being tasked with managing a fragile male ego. Like that is so annoying. Um, so even though the world is over, quote unquote, she still has to deal with this very everyday problem that like every woman is familiar with when you like encounter a man that you don't know. You have to kind of like do this risk assessment that she does like straight up, and then she's like, okay, I don't think I'm in imminent danger, but I still need to like play this very carefully. And she is good at assessing risk. Ooh, my headphone. And I
No,
think
she
that is
was.
sort of
She was
like a
very good at it.
universal female experience of it doesn't you don't need to be in an apocalyptic situation to kind of always be have that awareness of, am I safe? Am I not? Could this situation tip into something else if I'm not careful?
Yeah, because like when they found the dead hiker,
Yes.
that's when you start. Well, you start seeing Grace. So she grabs the pocket knife
Hmm.
because, and it was funny because when she did that, I was sitting there thinking, she knows how to use that to her
Hmm.
advantage, if it's to use it for survival or whatever. She did not like the pistol she found.
No.
And what was funny is when Aaron took the pistol or the handgun, it was weird because when you watch this film, you're not thinking that, okay, he's not using that or holding it as something to protect him. He's not using it as something to maybe kill wild game and be able to eat, because he doesn't seem that type that would. His ordeal was, if I did kill something to eat, who's gonna break it down so I can eat it, because he's sure not gonna do it.
Yeah, he would not know what to do with a deer carcass. He would be,
So when I
no.
looked at him holding the gun, all I thought of was, this is not a good situation.
Hmm. Same. And
Yeah.
Grace is immediately like, okay, we're done.
Yeah,
You
she
do
was
whatever you
like
want to
done.
do.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
when I went through, I watched this film a few times, so when I was looking at Grace,
Hmm.
some of the topics kind of popped in my head. Female empowerment was number one. Um, I didn't view Grace as a feminist at all, but one of just simply, in my mind, I noticed her strength. There was a calmness that's almost difficult to explain, and there was a bit of this hidden wisdom. She was resilient. She knows, or at least would learn on the fly, on how to survive.
Hmm.
Um, but then there was two other areas of this film that I think the audience is going to have to take in and ask themselves, are you willing to do things that may go against your nature to survive? And a bit on both sides, there's a little bit of a mental health issue here, both positive and negative. Did I assess that right?
I'll speak to that first, the first part. I think that, yeah, she's someone who knows her own mind, and she's arrived at this kind of like acceptance of like her own death and just like wanting to like be left alone. But when confronted with violence, she also has like animal, like that like animal survival deep instinct still comes out. Like we can like live the life of the mind as much as we want, but we those are still baked into us. So like that, all those things come out, and she's actually very willing to fight when confronted with danger and violence. Um, and I think that is just something that we all have animal instincts that can be brought out of us given the circumstances, especially when fear and survival are brought into it. And in terms of mental health, I'm not sure. I'm not sure I understand your
Well,
question. If
not
you could.
not not as when I say that, I don't mean like
Hmm.
mental illness. It's more I should have said the mindset.
Mm,
There's a positive side and then there's a negative side on the mindset, but there's a mixture of both with both characters because we're talking about the end of the world. And
yes.
for some people, they're not going to sit there calmly. I mean, think about the general population if they were out in the forest somewhere like those two. Some of them
Yeah.
would be rushing back to their SUV and to go home and see what's left.
Yep.
You know, um, it's kind of like I give some people the example of, let's say there is a plane crash, but everybody survives. And instead of rushing off the plane to safety, everybody's trying to grab their belongings before they get off,
Hmm.
you know? And so there's so many ideas through this film that I just really, really loved because it gets the audience to think and to wonder what they would do. But Grace had that, I guess you said it. She had that instinct that if she was pushed to survive, she was going to do what she had to do to survive. And she showed that in this film. And I mean, when have you had audiences see this film yet?
Yes. So we did have our premiere 2 weeks ago at Dances with Films.
So
So
what
we
was
yeah,
the
I got to
audience's
watch it for the
reaction?
first time with an audience. It was really positive. I was really pleased by it. I mean, if I could have, I would have had everyone fill out a survey so I could get like max feedback from it. But just watching the movie with an audience, there was laughs when we were hoping there would be laughs, and there was like and when we were hoping to have those reactions. So overall, I felt really felt great about people understanding um, what we were getting at and being there with us through the story.
Well, what were some of the questions that you received from the audience?
Um, lots of people are genuinely confused by Grace. Just like why is she doing what she's doing, which I think is interesting. Because that like mirrors Aaron's reaction to her, and I like that because I obviously this is Grace's story, and like as a person, I identify with Grace's character more, but I did want to like bring some balance of like I didn't want Aaron to be completely a caricature of a fumbling idiot or bad guy. Um, so that's something I talked to the actor Griffin Newman a lot about, is that like you are getting frustrated. Erin's getting frustrated with Grace because Grace is being frustrating. She's not behaving the way you'd expect her to behave, and that is a totally valid reaction to the situation. So when I get that feedback, I'm like, yeah, like that's she is kind of being stubborn and inscrutable.
He's being obnoxious.
Yeah,
Um,
he like his frustration builds quickly.
well, yeah, and the other thing that I was that kind of I guess perturbed me as if I was Grace in the same situation
Hmm.
was he kept wanting to eat all her food. And I'm like, dude, have you ever heard of
Yeah, he was very
rationing?
hungry.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm like, you
Yeah.
gotta if it's the end of the world, I would probably be rationing the food a little bit longer just to kind of get a whole assessment of what this whole situation
And yet he
is
does it with the
about.
apple. He's like, is there anything better in there?
Yeah, yeah, I loved the apple dot. Okay, so let me ask, was the apple placed there as a reference to the beginning of creation?
Um, that crossed my mind that like apples are heavy with that that imagery. And I wouldn't say that's necessarily why it's there, because that bookend of seeing her at the beginning, bookending the end, was actually like a pretty like late in the game addition. Um, but I wouldn't say it was like my number one motivation to include it, but I certainly don't mind that association being drawn. I think it's
Yeah,
an interesting one.
I think it works better than an orange. But to, but to see but to see Aaron's reaction to the apple, I was just like,
Yeah, at that point,
really?
by the time they find the dead hiker, they are so sick of each other, and they are both annoyed and resentful, and that like the little sequence that comes right before that very long scene with the dead hiker and the gun, I is one of my favorite parts of the movie because it's the most playful, because we're just like seeing really quickly like all of this relationship like devolves so fast in these simple moments and looks and eye rolls. And I as a filmmaker, I'm always trying to work as economically as possible to tell the story, and I feel like that is a successful moment in the film of deploying that well.
The thing that made me laugh was watching Grace's facial expressions because the you're catching her expression. There's no words. She's watching Aaron. She's listening to what he's saying, but these expressions are so funny because she's like, okay, I don't like the guy. Um, he needs to calm down, and he really needs to go on his way and leave me alone. You know, it's almost like it's that perfect moment of an eye roll is what she's doing.
Yes, I agree. And that actress, Alexandra Renzo, is so talented and really understood this character. And I there so much in life goes unsaid, right? So she is telling the story so much in those moments of like, oh my God, this guy. Am I ever gonna be, am I stuck with this guy forever? Ugh.
It's like, is this who I'm going to spend my last days with?
Hmm.
I mean, could you imagine, maybe your life is pretty cool. You get to go hiking whenever you want. The end of the world is right to, you're at the doorstep, and then a moron shows up.
Yeah, she's reached this level of like radical acceptance about life and death, and then all of a sudden he like comes and upends all of that.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I can still see it in my head. I can still see her facial expressions because they were so funny, but they spoke volumes far beyond what the dialogue was.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, and I
And
feel
yeah,
sorry for Aaron. No, go ahead.
I just that pleases me to hear as a filmmaker and a writer because you want that subtext to be there and to read.
Oh yeah, and I'm not going to give it away because I want people to see this film. But when the climax hits, I was thinking that either she realized how strong she really was,
Hmm.
or you will do what you need to do to survive. And that's how I viewed her in that moment.
Yes, yeah, I think those survival instincts override everything. Rationality, certainly, and they're in all of us, which is fascinating to think about. And the fact that like she's not going to be unaffected by what happens and what she ends up doing when those instincts kick in, and like that's life, right? Like we are deeply affected by the things that happen to us, um, regardless of um, who they sometimes our actions force us to reconsider who we are and what we're capable of and what we actually believe. And I think that's sort of where we leave her, where she is like had reached kind of this heady conclusion of like I can accept that I'm not going to survive this situation, but actually like letting yourself die is against every single instinct in your body, and that is not an easy thing to do. And actually she's capable of like a lot more than she thought, probably.
Yeah, to really think about that, hypothetically,
Mm.
let's say she only had 2 days left, or
Hmm.
let's say 3 or 4, because if once you run out of food, you can probably kind of last that long, especially if you have enough water. Um,
Hmm.
I think it would be harder to face your mortality than having to face the decision on what she did to protect herself.
Hmm.
So when that scene came up, because I was thinking a lot, because when I went back to when Aaron got the handgun, because when they found the dead hiker, that scene, it kind of scared me a little bit because I got to thinking, I'm like, okay, we live in a country where I think the estimates are over 300 million guns are in private citizens' possessions. And I'm thinking, okay, if we are going to go into survival mode, how
Mm.
many people are going to choose that as a way of getting what they feel that they need to survive? And then will we truly see the diminishing of human value?
Oh yeah, that is a thought that also scares the bejesus out of me, because I think at this particular moment, lots and lots of people in our country feel like not only is the apocalypse, the end of life as we know it, possible, it feels imminent. And I think for at least some of those people, that's the reason they have the guns. And so they're ready when that end time comes. And so, like, this idea that Aaron says in the beginning is like, well, we got to do something because survivors are going to be fighting each other sooner rather than later. Then is basically what he says. It's like that's actually something like I think like that was a part of me that is an Aaron of like, oh yeah, like whoever's left over, like it's not going to be this beautiful cooperative utopia. It's going to be people are going to be brutal to each other, and that is deeply scary. And it's totally rational of Aaron to be scared of that, in my opinion.
Why? You know what the perfect? I think the perfect example was when the pandemic started, and they were going to go, okay, we're going to shut everything down for 2 weeks to flatten the curve. What was the first thing? What were the two things that everybody grabbed first? Toilet
And
paper
Sanny,
and
toilet
bottled water.
paper. Yeah, yeah.
And so then you get to thinking, okay, because then from that point, especially because Aaron's the perfect example because his mentality, if you really think about it, I mean, I found it a little scary. And because I knew when he had the handgun, this was not about go hunting for deer or bear. This was going for all the wrong reasons.
Sure.
And then I got to thinking in real life, I'm like, what, those that are probably prepped are probably like, yeah, no big deal. I'm cool. But then the regular people who have one roll of toilet paper left and no bottled water,
Hmm.
what's it going to be like when you walk into a grocery store where, let's say, there's no electricity, the freezers, who knows how long, and what will people grab and what will people fight over? And are they fighting for survival? Are they just fighting for need or want? Or are they fighting for protection? And a lot of people in this country mentally are not even prepared for any of that.
Yeah, I think we are deeply isolated from one another, and um, there's a very individualistic mentality in our country of I need to protect me and mine because no one else will do it for me. I can't count on anyone else to take care of me. And that I think that is deeply embedded in our culture and is used, is employed to like excuse all sorts of deeply antisocial, violent behavior.
Yeah, one of the things that I noticed I was very, very happy about in this film,
Mm,
as you kind of you didn't focus on technology.
no.
So I love that it was raw. What do you do when you go on a hike? What do you do when you go camping? You kind of want to get away from everything. And I like the fact that you omitted that element in this because it kept us focused on the two characters, their thought processes, their emotions, whether they were open emotions or hidden emotions, because we could feel and sense. And see, that's the thing about this film. When everybody watches a film, we receive an emotion or feel something. This film, Dead Weight, is more of you're sensing something. We
Mm,
don't get a lot of films that cause the audience to sense and in that sense, it's like a future sense. It's like, okay, now what's going to happen? You know, because again, I can keep going back and forth on this one, but you know, the handgun was the disruptor.
hmm. Absolutely.
So yeah, so that was the third character here, not the pocket knife. The
Totally.
handgun was because it's a very weighty issue. You have those that have no problem with it for protection. You have those that have no problem with it because they go hunting a couple of times a year. But nobody ever thinks about a holding. Well, I'm not saying everybody. The majority of the normal people don't think about holding one and thinking that they're going to go out and do harm. Aaron was on this. He was on a he was on a fine line or a spectrum here, and I was just like, which way is he going to go?
Yeah, I think Aaron is like, oh, this is going to help protect me. I'm protecting myself from other people, you know. And in terms your point about that sense or like dread is what I was really going for. Like comes down to this issue of genre. So while we were prepping this movie, like all throughout the process, I had so many conversations with my collaborators where I was like, it's not a horror. We're not making horror, and we're definitely not making sci-fi. And that's part of the reason we're not like getting into the nitty gritty of why did the world end? How did it work? Why is the dead hiker dead? Is it what? Um, like really, really light on those details because I wanted to make a thriller. I wanted to like plot people down in the circumstances, just give them enough information that the scenario feels plausible. They understand what's going on. They're not like fighting confusion the whole time, and then just put two characters in a really tense situation and let that feeling of dread build and build and build. And I think that is the hallmark of a good thriller. And yeah,
Well,
it was it.
you know, one of the elements that when when Aaron first held a handgun, I kept watching this really, really close,
Mm,
and I was surprised you didn't do this. Not that it needed to be done, but I noticed that he was holding the handgun. I'm like, dude, you've had no training, and you're
he's never held
holding
a
this
gun before in
gun
his life.
point.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, he was point. It was a point blank at her. He's not thinking, you know.
Mm.
And I'm thinking, if that thing goes off, you're gonna kill her. And he not once ever thinks that what he is holding in his hand is dangerous.
Yeah, he sees it as protection for him versus like not at all as a threat to other people in that moment for sure. I had a rule on the set with the actors where at no point should anyone look cool holding the gun. No one, neither of these characters know anything about guns. They're not gun owners. Like they have seen guns in movies, and that is the extent of their experience with weapons.
Was
And
it a
so,
prop or was it real?
oh, it was a rubber gun. Yeah.
Well, it looked real.
Well, I'm happy to hear that because we spent a we at no point during production did we ever consider using a real gun as a prop. That was decided on long, long ago, just for like safety and a bunch of reasons. But
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. We don't.
we're
Yeah.
we're very nervous about it could be a real story killer if all of a sudden this gun pops out and it looks hokey and fake and rubber. But our production designer Laura Morris worked her magic, added some sound design in there, and then Griffin does an amazing job, like playing with it, handling it,
No,
and
I
all of
actually
those
thought it was
things made
real.
it feel real. Okay,
Yeah.
amazing. I'm so happy to hear that
Yeah, I
because
thought it was real. So, how did you come to cast both Alexandra Renzo and Griffith Newman?
okay, so Alexandra Renzo is a New Mexico-based actor. She lives in Santa Fe, and I saw her in a play at the Santa Fe Playhouse years ago. I had this script. Didn't really have a plan of how to produce it, but I saw her in The Effect at the Santa Fe Playhouse, and she was so good. And I drove home that night being like, oh, like she would get, I think she would be great in this. And that's sort of what got my wheels turning of like, okay, I want to pick up this project again and really push it forward. Because at that point I was still relatively new to New Mexico and hadn't um like really connected with anyone in the filmmaking community here. But like that, so that was like a real impetus of like, okay, if I'm gonna make this movie, I gotta start putting it out there. I gotta start meeting people. But yeah, I just so after that, I like found her email and then I emailed her the script and I pestered her for like the better part of a year. And very friendly, very professional, of course, but so much of producing or just getting a project off the ground is sort of shooting off emails into the ether and hoping someone gets back to you and reads the script and sees what you're going for. And that she read it and she got it, and she's a producer on the film and has been an amazing creative collaborator. And then with Griffin Newman, he is New York based, New York born and raised. And I lived in New York. Sorry, these headphones love falling out. Can you still hear me
It's all
okay?
right. It's good.
Uh, so I had never met Griffin, but we had a couple mutual friends. And he is a working actor. And he was in a show called Search Party. And as a working actor, he's very typecast into these like nebbish, like nerdy roles. And I saw him in an episode of Search Party, and he was so good in it. And he was sort of playing against type in this way where within this story, everyone assumes this guy is kind of like weak and easy to manipulate, and like we'll be able to fool him just fine. And he doesn't fall for it. In fact, he's like kind of menacing in return. And I just found his performance to be so good and surprising, and uh, all the things that I was going for with Aaron, all of these layers of peeling the onion back. And again, I sent him an email and said, "Hey, you don't know me. I think you're great. Check out this script."
And he read
And
it.
he read it and he got it. And I was up until the moment that we had like picked him up at the airport in Albuquerque. I was like, it's never gonna happen. He's not gonna. Why would he want to do our silly little movie? But he came out here, and I think he's so good in it, and I think he brings so much to the character. And like, yes, he is like so funny and like was so willing to like go there with Aaron's hateable moments, but also like brought a lot of vulnerability and truth to Aaron. And I don't know, I love these performances so much.
Yeah, they were both fantastic in this film, and I just love the fact when independent filmmakers literally just go for broke, they send an email out, and and some of them, they kind of reach for the stars with some of these people, and just by chance, the actor loves the script and they say yes, and then the rest of the magic happens. So with Dead Weight, what was the biggest challenge for you as a director?
Oh man, as a director, I think that so I had directed other projects before, but this was the first narrative thing that I had written and was also directing. And I found that I was like, I knew the story backwards and forwards. It was so specific in my head, and the tone was so specific. So it's like, as a director, just being clear every step of the way with all of your collaborators, this is the thing that we are making. And like going back to that like genre conversation of like, even like I remember like meeting with the DP early on, and I was like, no, 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 not a horror. Like, so we wouldn't shoot it like a horror, we'd shoot it like a thriller. And like, what does that mean? Um, just as a small example of like constantly having to like go inside and be like, okay, what is it that's in my head? How do I explain that, communicate that to other people who need to understand what's going on in my head so that we can make the thing together? And that part was incredibly rewarding because what we ended up making is what I set out to make. Um, it's not far at all from the like original intention. And yeah, like that kind of really owning the vision and making sure that's like legible to everyone involved was an exciting challenge, but like really, really fun. Like having a really talented group of people come together to like make the thing that's in your brain that really only exists in your brain and nowhere else is an incredibly rewarding,
Okay,
cool
I,
experience.
I have a question because normally I
Sure.
would know the difference between a thriller and a horror
Uh,
film. What would have made this a horror film?
Jump scares. Um, wow, that's a good question.
Yeah, I mean, without having a monster and some spiritual,
Yeah,
being,
I
so to
think
speak.
maybe Aaron being like more black and white as a villain. You
Oh,
like that like
oh,
pursuit.
like if he was standing behind a tree and he
Yeah.
just appeared out of nowhere, but he was more like just kind of like glaring at her.
Yeah, so there was a version of the script at some point where like we're with Grace alone for a long time, but like the audience becomes aware she's being watched by someone or something. And so like that feels very horror to me. Of
I get
but
it.
I like that. What for me to feel like the thriller is that you have two characters, like just like human nature is the evil.
Yeah.
You don't
Yeah.
have a slasher like popping out from behind a tree. It's just like, oh, like human interactions can devolve into horrifying circumstances versus needing like a monster to bring the horrifying circumstances to you.
Yeah. Uh, yeah, because when you sit out, I was sitting here thinking, going, I've never thought about that. From a DP point of view, there's a difference. And I never thought about that. I'm thinking, okay, I've seen thrillers, I've seen suspense thrillers, I've seen psychological thrillers, and then there is horror, and then there's gore, So, yeah, now I'm okay. I get it now. It's all based on, I guess, the scenes you create.
Yeah. And clearly they're close together. So
Yeah,
these
they
are kind of
are.
like fine-tuned differences, but um, that's where that like specificity of communication comes in, right? Like everyone needs to be making the same movie.
Well, was there any particular film or films that you drew inspiration from to create Deadweight?
I'm sure the answer is yes, but whenever someone asks me this question, my mind goes so blank. Um, a movie that I love and that I think is a good example of a thriller is Michael Clayton. Um, because obviously these two movies have like couldn't be more different. But what I like about that movie, and I always appreciate when I rewatch it, is that the Tilda Swinton character is evil. She's doing evil things, but the character is written in such a way, and Tilda Swinton is playing the character in such a way that like you see that like it's just a person. In
Like
circumstances like
Misery?
what's that?
Like Misery with Kathy Bates?
Oh, well, she's more of like a psychopath, right?
Yeah,
But
yeah, I guess so.
like you can like yeah, the Tilda Swinton character is so desperate. Like it's desperation that's leading her to do all these things in like this corporate environment that's so strange and dehumanizing that they make it feel plausible how the character gets to the point that she does what she does, as opposed to her just being like, ha 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 ha, I just pew pew anyone I don't like. And like that sort of that humanness that like humans are capable of such horrible things, but not because they're monsters, but because they're human.
Yeah.
That is a fascinating idea to me and something I think about a lot.
Yeah, this whole film it's real, it's authentic, and everything in the film can really happen in real life. This is why I love Dead Weight. What would you like all the audiences when they finally see this film? What would you like the audiences to take away from it?
Wow, Virginia Root should get funding for a feature.
There you go.
That's number one.
Yeah, I like that. Good answer.
And I hope they I hope they're entertained and on first watch are just like entertained by the story and kind of experience it on that level because I it is really important to me to for the movie to be an entertaining story. And we've like discussed so many heady ideas, but I do think like first and foremost it is just like an exciting watch. Um, and then I hope that they're thinking about it a day or two later. And I mean, like, I hope it's something that gets under people's skin a little bit and is something they want to like talk about, or maybe they disagree with their friends. Like that, that would be really cool.
Yeah, and see, that's what makes some of the best short films is the audience is still talking about it either on their way home or thinking about it and maybe talking about it the next day. And Dead Weight is definitely one of those films. And ladies and gentlemen, Grace, played by Alexandra Renzo, she is a solo female backpacker, unwittingly survives, well, an end of the world event while in the wilderness. She resolves to live out the rest of her days in peace until she encounters Aaron, played by Griffin Newman, a fellow survivor with a very different take on the end of the world. Now, Dead Weight is one of those few films in which it places the audience in the shoes of the characters. Yes, you will be thinking from the start, what would I do? And that's a great question to ask yourself. Now, I hope the world doesn't end with a nuclear blast or a plague without a cure, but you should view Dead Weight with a positive mindset and even a bit of inspiration, well, to toughen up. Learn how to stand on your own 2 feet like Grace did. Now, I know that I view film much differently than my fellow critics out there, but films bring different outlooks and messages for the audience to ponder, and Dead Weight does just that. And Virginia Root has brought us a bit of a learning experience, but it also opens up more conversations about life and death and what would you do to survive, or maybe what would you do to not necessarily give up, but plan the end of your days. So be on the lookout for Dead Weight on the film festival circuit and make sure that you are seated in the theater to watch this film. Believe me, it'll leave a lasting impression on you just as it did me. And Virginia, I want to thank you so much for sharing your film with me today, and much success to you in all of your future efforts and endeavors.
Thank you so much for having me. This was such a fun conversation. I appreciate it so much.
You're very welcome. And ladies and gentlemen, you can catch all of the Bond on Cinema interviews at bondoncinema.com. Check out our Prime show, our YouTube channel, and you can listen to us on your way to work or to play, or maybe on a day hike. Listen to us on Spotify, iTunes, and Audible if you can get a signal out in the wilderness. So check it out. And remember, you're either going to see me at the movies or from the red carpet.
Maybe we should do something for him, like a funeral, what's it called? Pyre?
Can't just go around ritually burning every dead body you find in the woods. Oh, you're breaking up with me?
I just think since we're both gonna die.
I am not going to die, okay?
I am so done doing things that I don't want to do.
Scared me. Sorry. I'll just come with you.
Great.